Well, the United Nations Security Council will be discussing renewing sanctions on South Sudan later today. The sanctions will expire on the 31st of May. The UN placed travel bans and asset freezes on senior South Sudanese officials in 2015. They were accused of fueling conflict. Now, ahead of that meeting, the UNSC will be briefed by the chair of the South Sudan Sanctions Committee and the UN peacekeeping mission in South Sudan on the situation in the country. Over the past few weeks, violence has surged in South Sudan. Thousands of people have been displaced by clashes between rebels and government forces. The head of UNMISS, David Shearer, has denounced the violations of the 2015 peace agreement and the cessation of hostilities agreement of December 2017. Well, for more on this, I am now joined in the studio by Michael Arunga. He is an expert on South Sudanese affairs. Thank you very much for coming in. What's your assessment of the remarks by the President welcoming back Riek Machar?
I think extremely welcome, because this is what the international community has been clamoring for. There's been extreme hostility between the two leaders. Twice, Riek Machar has fled from South Sudan, from Juba. One time actually from the palace into his residence, and they followed him there, and I was able to see his homestead that was completely, destroyed. So lots of tension, but then to get them to come together, to start to reach out in light of the 50,000 people that have been killed since 2013 December, over 4 million people being displaced, 1 million of them in Uganda. I think if this can bring about peace that can start to bring them together and to address the challenges that they face, it is a good thing and quite welcome. So
he's held out an olive branch here. What do you think could have prompted this change of heart?
Many issues, I think. Definitely the sustained pressure, the advocacy from the United Nations, from IGAD, from the neighbors who have come together, and just borrowing a leaf from the politics in Kenya, where the head of state and the opposition have come together.
So it's come from pressure
yes,
from
and
outside.
I think just being able to learn from what is out there, and then the pressure, and maybe as a leader, just looking at the suffering of his people in light of the challenges that they face, hunger, lack of access, and then the need to be able to bridge this, which can be able to sort out the issues. I think that might have prompted the change of heart.
And so what do you think is the likely impact of this development on the peace process in South Sudan?
As I've mentioned, it is likely to embolden those who are pushing towards bringing them together, ensuring that there's peace. I think they're likely to be encouraged. I think it's a good development, because the kind of challenges that we have seen across this very expansive nation have been extreme. But then seeing this development of previous leaders who have not sat together, one inviting the other, I think that is possible. But I would, whether he will jump, Riek Machar will jump onto this opportunity, is another issue, because it has happened before. I would encourage maybe the head of state to reach out to him wherever he is in exile, to start the process of talking, because when this has happened before, it has not ended up well. So it's with a pinch of salt, but then it's a welcome kind of development, and we hope it will be sustained and looked at in the perspective from those who are affected, and seen through to the very end. It will be really, really welcome.
But as you say, we don't know if he's going to agree to it. What more do you think can the international community do you think, to stabilize the country? And do you think sanctions are effective at this stage?
Yes, I think there are a number of questions that I ask myself. The arms that find themselves their way into South Sudan, who is providing these arms, and those kind of challenges that need to be addressed at an international level. And of course, peace in South Sudan has a bearing on the neighbors, and the United Nations, and of course the Sustainable Development Goals and what they are clamoring for. They will not be achieved if one nation is not committed towards pushing this ahead. But then it's very, very, very important, I think, that the international community sees this opportunity through, and they follow up to ensure that it doesn't fall through the cracks, and ensure that these leaders come together and they begin to talk, and there's genuineness, so that they don't just come together and then again we have a scenario like has happened in the past.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your analysis. Michael Arunga there, an expert on South Sudanese affairs.